The debate whether proprietary or open source software is healthy for your company's IT infrastructure has been a long-standing one. Technologists, software evangelists, IT managers, CIOs all have differing views on it. While some choose to play safe and invest in a licensed solution, the fear of getting locked down into a vendor's set environment and the inability to experiment makes some CIOs wonder if open source could be a viable option. Red Hat, one of the world's premier companies providing open source solutions to enterprises, envisaged the two-day CIO Power Conclave in the scenic state of Goa to answer this and many such similar questions. Dirk Peter van Leuven, Vice President and General Manager at Red Hat APAC, and Arun Oberoi, EVP Global Sales and Services at Red Hat, unwrapped the conclave and set the agenda for the day ahead.
One of the key objectives for us as Red Hat in the next few days is to not only let you listen to us, it is primarily meant for us to listen to you. You hopefully know Red Hat as an open source company. So we don't sell products really. We sell services, innovative solutions, and we do a lot more than providing you a product. Because the open source world provides all the technology that's there. What we do is we give you the tools, the ability, and the help and support to make a very strong competitive solution out of it. Now we believe that if we look at the overall growth of the company, that India provides a unique opportunity to us. We've seen major projects happening, and a few unique things we've seen in India, like for example with the UID project, which is a project that is purely based on open source. It's a highly successful project, and we've been closely involved in designing, developing, and rolling out that project, and we're very proud of that. We think it also shows that open source in India has really gone a long way and is really ready for all enterprises and all businesses across the country. And we believe that this is the right moment to get you all together and do a lot of exchange about how we can actually improve as a company, how can we improve our relationship with you, where do you feel that we need to do more, maybe less, how we can be more successful together. And that's what the next few days is all about, collaborating. So we would like to listen as much to you as you listen to us. And I would like to say, let's collaborate together and let's make this a power event. Thank you so much.
And when we speak of the cloud, whether it's a private tenant, single tenant, multi-tenant, private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, our vision is to enable the open hybrid cloud. And the movement is unstoppable. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So the entire strategy is focused around how do we get to this paradigm of this open interconnected services that sit on top of this open infrastructure. When I say open, I just don't mean open in terms of APIs, I mean open in terms of open source. We as a company passionately believe in this idea of 1,000 points of light. The concept of this idea of computing as a utility dates back to the early 60s, where I think it was Professor McCarthy, John McCarthy, he talked about the idea of computing as a utility served just like electricity or water or what have you. And then in the mid-70s, it died away, this idea of computing as a utility, because all the pieces that make computing a true utility were not quite in place. The bandwidth was not quite in place. Despite Moore's law, the processing power was not quite in place. Software was not quite in place. And so it died away, and again, since then, it has been reborn with a renewed vigor, where you see a lot of business models, some represented right here in this room, embracing the idea of computing delivered through the cloud, through an open hybrid cloud as a utility. The pieces that have come together from a technology perspective, bandwidth I mentioned was a big issue. The pieces that have come together today, voice, video, data, seamless mobility across 4G networks, has made bandwidth much of a non-issue. It used to be a major issue, if you recall back just a few years ago. Processing power is going up exponentially. Software, with things like SOA, all these composite applications coming together on a service-oriented architecture. There's a lot of coming together of technology that's making it possible. So the concept and the technology is there, but even more importantly than that, there's the elements of suitability. Do you have the elements of suitability in terms of access to these services, devices, your iPhone, etc.? And do you have, most importantly, the attitude required to make computing a true utility?
IT leaders from across different verticals sat together to exchange a few thoughts on open source and its viability in an enterprise.
To be able to put this in perspective, I turn to you, Arun. What is open source for the large benefit of our viewers out there? If you can put that in perspective and how it's being used today.
So in this context, I'll keep it at a summary level. I'll go a mile high, an inch deep. And open source, as contrasted with proprietary source, is open. And when we say open, we mean open as in built by, developed by a community of developers, a growing community of developers, which is growing by the day exponentially so. And it's made available to the community. Anyone can download it for free, as opposed to proprietary software, which is, it has to be paid for,
right,
which the source code is owned by the company that makes it, and they have their own IPs on it. They don't distribute it freely. This software is available openly. It's people, the communities develop and give it back to the community. So it's a growing base of code which adds a lot of agility, speed of innovation, and just immense rich functionality into it.
Right.
The types of people that contribute to it range from very large companies to individuals and thousands across the world.
Right. So obviously it throws up a world of opportunities. You having worked, DP, in the APAC region, where do you think India stands at this point in time to be able to use this huge window of opportunity?
Well, I can compare quite well across the region, and I think India is leading in many ways. And one particular way in which India is leading in the adoption of open source is in the government space. Obviously, given the sheer size of India and the challenges that the Indian government has to deploy software and the costs associated, make open source uniquely suitable. But the challenge of getting that done and implementing an entire stack is quite big. And I can say that I'm very proud to see that India has successfully done this with Red Hat technology and other technologies. And so I think India is quite leading in this area.
Yes. And we have some consumers as well. As far as you're concerned, Ravi, what is happening at Tata Sky by way of innovation using open source?
Media business, basically direct to home, is a commodity business in India. Right, there's 6 or 7 player market. The only difference which can give one leg up to the business is service, right? By adopting open standards, I'm able to offer this to my leadership team and to end consumers to keep pace with their demands and ensure that the service is fully met for for the trade as well as end customers.
Right. At SR Group, what has been your core team's strategy to be able to take on the possibilities that open source lends itself to?
See, SR is a 27 billion organization spread across 25 countries, and we have around 75,000 people working across the globe. And our main strategy is that how we can improve the employees' productivity and we can give a seamless experience to end users. And innovation side, 2 kind of innovation is going on. One is innovation on IT, and second is innovation on plant automation side.
Right.
And we have an innovation team of around 7 people, and they're closely working with all major OEMs to understand their roadmap, right, and what kind of technology they are bringing, and how I can fit that technology in my existing architecture, so that I can reduce the cost, I can improve their employees' productivity, and I can give a seamless experience to end user.
Arun, from what you were saying, by way of what you do at Red Hat, this example that he's offering in terms of being able to use a certain technology and giving a certain kind of value addition to the organization, how can you make it better? By doing what? What kind of service can you offer that will help streamline this innovation?
So 2 things, really. So the levels we operate on is we are a big contributor to the community, the open source community. We're a big proponent of the open source community. And the more life the open source community has, the more contributions we can make to our customers. At the other level, what we get from the open source community is, in many cases, projects. Some of them are loosely coupled projects. So we at Red Hat, we take those projects, we harden them, we make them platforms, we make them products, we harden them, and then we take those, make sure they're tested, verified across a range of platforms, thousands of platforms, so that in turn our customers, what they get from us is hardened code where they can deploy mission-critical, life-critical applications. And there's numerous examples around the world. Half the world's stock exchanges run on Red Hat open source software.
Right.
These are critical applications.
Sure.
And they're supported by us. In fact, that's our business model as well.
Sure.
The software is available free. Our business model is more about supporting it and making revenues from the support services.
But having said that, I mean, we have been late entrants, being able to use the kind of technologies that we do. Considering that it has been around for some time, why is the move so late and so considered, I would say? Because obviously there have been concerns about security and other things, but where does it stand right now? And this move towards it, being able to use this technology better, why is it taking its time?
I think if you look at the last 36 months, we've seen an acceleration in that adoption here in the country, right? Like DP mentioned, the government of India was a very big proponent of open source and open standards. We saw this proliferating into the financial markets. There are stock exchanges in India that today run extensively on Red Hat. We've seen this permeate into telecom organizations where, and again, if you think about, where revenues are declining, ARPUs or average revenue per users are declining, the cost structure has to go down. So we've seen the adoption of open source and Red Hat quite heavily in telecom organizations. We've seen that happen, and this has traditionally been the top. These are the first 3 sectors that adopt new technologies anywhere in the world, right? Even 11 years back when we started our journey, it was Wall Street that kicked off the adoption of Red Hat. So we're seeing very similar things. Now we're seeing mainstream organizations. We're seeing manufacturing, chemical, automotive. Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. And a large part of that has got to do with the fact that today it's mainstream. The skills are available in the marketplace. The partners, the big system integrators, they all know this. They know the advantages. So it's the whole ecosystem that's coming together.
Right.
It's a little late, you're right. But I think the great thing about India is we don't have the legacy that the Western world has.
Which is?
So if you think about infrastructure build-out, India and China lead the world because of greenfield infrastructure build-out, right? So the next few years is going to see an explosion of infrastructure in these markets, whereas Western world has had infrastructure that's extremely dated. So if, for example, if you look at cost structure of our telecom service providers in India, and you compare that to anywhere in the Western world, it's a fraction, right? And the reason is because they were set up fairly new. They didn't have the legacy to deal with, so they could innovate in those business models straight up from the ground.
Right.
And so a huge difference when you're doing a lot of greenfield projects versus having to do rip and replace, which can be very expensive from a technology perspective and a people perspective.
What is going to drive me in terms of if a corporation is considering moving on from the proprietary kind of setup, is cost the best selling point, or are there other factors that they need to consider as well?
I think the other huge thing that's happened in the last 3 years, a lot of it driven by innovation from Intel, and we participate in that innovation cycle, is the performance aspect. If you talk to stock exchanges today around the world, it's not so much about cost, it's how quickly am I going to execute a trade. So when the market is falling or going up in whichever direction, that microsecond, nanosecond makes a huge difference, could be a couple of $1 million. So if you think about the stock exchanges that we work with around the world, for them, while cost is an important part of the value equation, they also want to get the most cutting-edge performance out of their systems. And so we've seen that paradigm shift from just being cost to a lot of emphasis on performance. And then the most important thing now, as you think about the cloud, everybody wants to be in an open platform. Nobody wants to be locked into something proprietary. So you take a combination of these three, that's the perfect storm in terms of why open source would become adopted in a very big way in any place around the world.
So is getting on the cloud the ultimate end game as far as you're concerned in terms of what's driving innovation as well? Because open source is going to be a step towards that.
The challenge for any of the IT department is the cost today, vis-a-vis along with implementation of the new technologies. So same challenges we faced along with reduction of the footprints what we have today onto the server farms. We, along with Red Hat, implemented RHEV platform and majorly